This is Logan Thomas, tight end for the Washington Commanders, and you're listening to the Best Bell Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome into episode 49 of the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Tonight, I'll be talking about NFL futures. We just had the first preseason game last night, Jacksonville versus the Las Vegas Raiders. And boy, did the whole NFL world get into a tizzy after Josh Jacobs played not hit the first drive, but also the second drive. That's right. Josh Jacobs, former first-round pick, played 2 drives. And then it was a combination of Zamir White, Kenyon Drake, Amir Abdullah shined. Whatever. The Raiders were playing their 2 A's, some 1s, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't play anybody. So it's not a surprise that it was a blowout and that the Raiders looked good. I don't care about that. It was good to have football last night. Let's not get carried away. Lots of fun. And welcome to the program, Jose. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you jumping in. It is late. I was able to watch the game last night, but it wasn't at my house. It was at my in-laws' house because all of about 2-3 hours ago, the power just turned back on. We had power off since this past Wednesday at about 6 o'clock Eastern. So over 48 hours. Nope. Yeah, I had only been doing some Twitter and some drafts on my phone, but that's the reality of how things are. I was planning on queuing this NFL Futures PrizePicks series off, planning to kick that off a couple days ago, but unfortunately with the power being out and taking care of family things, that's what's most important. Thanks for hanging with me, especially here late at night, almost 11 o'clock Eastern. Also had to clean up, lots of things happening. Have to prepare the whole house for my family for me to leave next weekend for the Fantasy Football Expo that's going to be in Canton, Ohio. So lots of fun things coming up. The NFL season is underway, and that's why we're going to talk NFL futures specifically in the context of PrizePicks versus my projection. I have just finished my projections. I'm still doing some tweaking because as they come back out to me, I'm looking at them like, the human in me says the machine shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be spitting out these numbers, but that's why I'm going to offer some context for the projections versus PrizePicks that I'm going to be doing tonight. So I'm going to offer some players that I noticed were really high compared to the PrizePicks projections, some players that are lower, and offer any advice that I can based on these. The first PrizePick line that I chose last night was Keelan Cole over 22.5 receiving yards. And on the first play of the game, Keelan Cole gets a 31-yard reception. So I'll take a win to start the season. You can check me out on the TikTok at Best Bell Fantasy. All right, let's get into it. The first quarterback I want to talk about tonight is Lamar Jackson. And across the board, for almost every indicator, passing yards, passing touchdowns, and rushing yards, I'm above. Now, what PrizePicks does as well is this is a season-long prop. If you go to PrizePicks, you can bet on NFL futures and the total number of yards. So, for instance, Lamar Jackson's PrizePicks line here is 3,550.5 passing yards. So let me go here and show you. Yeah, so if we go down all the way to Lamar Jackson, for instance, 3,550 passing yards, 0.5. So you have to choose the over under. PrizePicks is really easy that way. You just choose over or under, and it's really easy to do it. You think that it's 50-50. But it's in a parlay setting, so you have to choose at least 2 of them. And that's why when I'm choosing the PrizePicks, and this is something that I've developed over the last couple of years in playing these and being a little bit more successful as of the last year, finding more success in betting unders, that there could be a lot of avenues for this player to fail. But also thinking about it from a probability standpoint. Let's say that you think, or I think, that Lamar Jackson's chance of getting the over is 60%. But also that I think that the over for Jameis Winston is also 60%. So you'd think to yourself, hey, I got a 60% chance of getting money. This is a good bet. I'm going to lean the Lamar Jackson and Jameis Winston overs. But here's the thing with probability is it's compounded. So 60% times 60% is actually only 36%. It's a 36% chance of winning if that is the actual probability of Lamar Jackson, Jameis Winston getting over. So you have to think about it that way, that the reason why it's hard to hit parlays, it's because it's compounded probability, or the probability is multiplied by itself. So I want to target players that there could be an under and a significant under, and there could be reasons why. So the most obvious reason why a player would get under is injuries, right? If a player is out for the season, this is actually the time to do all these NFL futures and take the unders on some of the most obvious ones, or the ones that are close. Because if they do hit, like, you're taking the percentage at face value. But if the player gets injured, boom, like, you've hit the under. And at about week 2, week 3, week 4 of these preseason, I think it's between week 2 and week 3, we see spikes in ACL injuries. Like, for instance, a couple years ago, we saw Jordy Nelson go down with ACL injuries, or Travis Etienne a couple years last year with the Liz Frank injury. The conditioning has been off the last couple years, and you don't know which players. You just it's safest to take the unders because there's not like a way that it'll auto to an over. You're going to have to actually play some games. But another example is performance enhancing drug suspensions. I was able to get the under on 1,150 receiving yards for DeAndre Hopkins. And that looks really good right now because Hopkins is only going to play 11 games. He needs to average over 100 yards receiving per game. And he has Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, Rondell Moore, AJ Green. There are ways in which, like, it's extremely unlikely. It's probably a 95% chance, 97% chance that DeAndre Hopkins doesn't get 1,100 yards in 11 games. Like, extremely unlikely. That's the type of thing that can happen. It can go to 0. And that's why betting these unders, like, even in the small chance that a player's hurt or out or whatever the reason may be, like, betting the unders right now is when to strike, because they'll immediately, like, PrizePicks will immediately pull off the lines once they find out that there's a suspension or an injury. So taking a step back before I jump into these, there's a philosophy behind it. Taking the unders is a smart move at this time of the year. There's so much uncertainty, and especially for players who, in my projections, have to hit the nuts to meet that PrizePicks projection. Those are the types of players that I want to be targeting, or at least taking a second look at when I'm putting my lines in, or my parlays in. Because if I said 60% times 60% gives you only 36% chance, 80% and 80% is still only 64%. But the expected value it weighs out. So, for instance, if I were to take, I'm just going to use this example. If I'm going to take the over on passing yards, I'm not saying I will, but I'm just giving this as an example. Over for Lamar Jackson, over for Jameis Winston. If I only have 2 picks, right, there are, let me see if I can zoom back out, right, to win 60. So it's 3 X's, my winnings, just picking 2 for PrizePicks. Just picking 2. So it's a parlay. So it depends on what in your head, right? What is the percentage that Jameis Winston and Lamar Jackson are going to get the overs? If it's like 75-75, right, that's going to be just a bit over 50%. Expected value, this is 3x. So you're probably going to pay off. You just need it to be more than a third of the chance afterwards. So the square root of 3 is, why am I blanking here? Whatever. You get the idea that ultimately you have to take the square root of whatever it is to get the expected value. Nevertheless, it's 11 o'clock. You're going to have to forgive my math at this point, but that's the idea, is that the philosophy behind the overs and unders is that you want to have positive expected value, and using projections can give you a baseline to at least gauge which players are close or which players I definitely should take the under for. And there's a good chance that, like, for instance, if it is 60%, 60%, that's 36%. So it's going to be like, what did I say? Square root of, or the square root of 0.33 is like 0.58. Like, you need the probability of this particular event happening to be about 57% for it to work out for you plus EV. Now, 57% of the time, it's a hard thing to gauge and put an exact number on it, but that's why these projections can be helpful. If there's even like a 3% chance or 4% chance that throughout the season a player may miss 2 games, right, or 3 games, that is meaningful. And later on, when I do my running back PrizePicks projections versus PrizePick lines, I've adjusted to 15 games for those, because looking historically, on average, running backs will miss about 2 games per season. And now that we're playing 17 games, it's maybe like 2.5 games per season. So you can only expect that running backs will play 14 or 15 games in the season. If we look at last year, looking at the top 24 running backs in fantasy points per game, only 3 of them played all 17 games. I know it was Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and another one. Nevertheless, the idea is that running backs rarely play all 17 games. So in my projections, if I project and play all 17 games and they're barely meeting the PrizePicks line, I'm probably going to take the under, because then there's a 2-game buffer built in. And that's how I want to think about it. And a 2-game buffer, what is that in the whole grand scheme of things? 2 out of 17 is like 12%, right? Boom. There's my edge. Okay. There's that extra 6-7% that I needed to give myself a plus EV. So that's how I'm viewing it, is each individual player has to have some sort of number. And I don't have that exact number, but the projections versus PrizePicks is going to be key here. So let me talk about Lamar Jackson first. I have projected Lamar Jackson a lot higher than what PrizePicks has him at. And I think the reason why is twofold. One is, I think Lamar Jackson is, if he hits the nuts, I think he can be the quarterback 1 again, and it is not close. The second part, the reason why I think that I have Lamar Jackson a lot higher is because PrizePicks probably builds in the running aspect, and how I mentioned earlier in the podcast, about 2 minutes earlier, that running backs tend to miss 2-3 games on the season. If they're missing 2 to 3 games and Lamar Jackson is rushing he's not a running back, but he runs at the volume of a running back, and we've seen him get hurt before and miss games before due to rushing related injuries, then it makes sense that I'm a little bit higher. So Lamar Jackson is probably not a player that I'm betting on PrizePicks very much. Now, the only prop that I might take for Lamar Jackson is interceptions. So right now, the PrizePick interception amount is 12.5. The over-under is 12.5. And in 17 games, my projected interceptions for Lamar Jackson is 12.2. And you're thinking to yourself, Bradley, that's really, really close. But you can't have your cake and eat it too with Lamar Jackson. You can't both say he's going to play all 17 games and then come back and say he's going to get the under on interceptions. No, like, he's going to play only so much. If you're playing him for 15 games, I already have him projected below his interception amount. then I'm taking the under for interceptions. If he only plays 15 games, it's closer to 11 or 10 interceptions, even with an increased pass volume, which I do have. I have Lamar Jackson projected for almost 558 pass attempts in 17 games. But docking that down by about 12%, docking down another interception or two, Lamar Jackson gets under that number. And it's more than about 50%, 57% of chance that he does. So if there's one prop for Lamar Jackson that I'm playing at all, it's his interceptions, and I'm taking the under on 12.5 interceptions. Okay. Let's move on to Josh Allen, because a lot of fun can be had with Josh Allen here. I also have his passing touchdowns below. Right now is let me go to Josh Allen passing touchdowns. There we go. So let's go to passing touchdowns. Josh Allen, 35.5 passing touchdowns. I have him projected for 34.3. And it's obviously under. I would play the under, but there are lots of ways that Josh Allen could fail as a passing touchdown guy. We could see regression for touchdowns for Stephon Diggs. We could see regression of touchdown rate for Gabriel Davis. We could see James Cook and Devin Singletary really run a lot. Or we could see an increase of goal line carries for Josh Allen. And that's what we've seen in the past, is Josh Allen rushing about the same amount as Cam Newton near the goal line. So if there's one prop for Josh Allen that I'm attacking, it's the under on passing touchdowns at 35.5. And I know we want to be really bullish on Josh Allen, but the only player that they brought in, a veteran presence in this Buffalo offense, is Jamison Crowder, who's injured to start and might lose his job to Isaiah McKenzie or Khalil Shakir, who's playing well both on the inside and outside. If there's one prop for Josh Allen, it's the under 35.5 passing touchdowns. 35.5 is a lot. Like Aaron Rodgers won MVP last year at 37 passing touchdowns. Granted, Aaron Rodgers only had four interceptions, but Josh Allen, there are lots of ways in which he can fail to get to 35.5. He needs to average over 2 passing touchdowns per game for the entire season. And there's a scenario where the Bills clinch. This is another thing to keep in mind, right? Especially with good teams. There's a scenario where the Bills clinch by the end of week 17. They don't need to play week 18 or their 17th game. So Josh Allen might be on the screws. He might be at 35 through 16 games and ahead of pace, and then doesn't need to play. So once again, another way in which Josh Allen can fail to meet the touchdown prop on PrizePicks. So if I'm taking an under, it's on Josh Allen for passing touchdowns. All right, with Patrick Mahomes. All right, here we go. Patrick Mahomes, one of my favorite projection to take the under on. Once again, I want to hit on unders. I don't want to be super aggressive on overs for Josh, for any of my quarterbacks, much less any players at this time of year. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, there are lots of ways in which these players can fail. And Patrick Mahomes right now, rushing yards is actually up. Let me go to rushing yards. There's a rushing yards prop on PrizePicks for Patrick Mahomes. At least there was. There we go. It's right here. 325.5 rushing yards. Now, as I mentioned before, there are lots of ways in which Patrick Mahomes can fail to get this. Plus, I took his in all of my projections, I take about the median shares of the previous season. Why the median rush shares or target shares? Those are the most repeatable year to year. In fact, I looked at average target share or team target share compared to individual weekly median target share among qualifying players. And the median target share is a better correlated stat year to year from 2020 to 2021 among wide receivers than it is for team target share or average target share. because with team target shares or average target shares, those outliers are taken into account much more significantly. The median tends to dampen those and give a fairer or more accurate number. Okay. So I want to take the under on Patrick Mahomes. And this is significant. This is perhaps one of the most significant unders that I identified among my quarterbacks pretty much anywhere aside from Jameis Winston interceptions, which I'll get to and I'll talk about. But aside from that, the rushing yard differential is based on my 17 game projection is 11.5% less than my projection rushing share. So I projected Patrick Mahomes for 288 rushing yards in 17 games. The line is 325. So taking the under here, like if Mahomes gets hurt, if the Chiefs win out, if kneel downs are negative rushing yards, if they're in winning game scripts, which the Chiefs tend to be, right, that negates a couple yards here and there, chip away. There are lots of ways in which Patrick and Orlando Brown is back. So he's going to play for the Chiefs. I believe he ended his holdout. So the offensive line is going to be okay. He doesn't need to scramble around. In fact, there are so many receiving weapons. He's just going to dump it off or throw it or hit Marcus Valdes-Scantling deep. There's no need for Patrick Mahomes to run around, and it makes sense though to take the under. You shouldn't be very aggressive about targeting Patrick Mahomes' rushing yards. In fact, you should be pessimistic, and that's what my projections have. So take the under on rushing yards for Patrick Mahomes. It's by perhaps one of the widest under margins of any of the big-time players in almost any of the props that I have. Okay, next, Jalen Hurts. Okay. Oh, man, this does hurt me a little bit. So Jalen Hurts, I go back to the touchdown passes. And my projection for Jalen Hurts, I do like that A.J. Brown has joined in to this Philadelphia team, but we're going to have to see a seismic shift in play calling, and betting on seismic shifts in play calling in preseason. That's not a good bet, especially with a rushing quarterback like Jalen Hurts. If they're close, they may just hand it off to Jalen Hurts and just say, you go for it, or run it with Miles Sanders. Okay. Or run it with Kenny Gainwell. Like last year, Jalen Hurts had 16 passing touchdowns in 15 games, and he was the number 6 quarterback in fantasy points per game. This is a quarterback who doesn't need to throw a lot of passing touchdowns. He's going to rush a lot. I have Jalen Hurts at 918 rushing yards. Okay. I have him, if you want to take a really nice over, the PrizePicks rush yards is 700.5. I usually don't take a lot of overs, but that one is like 31% over my projection, or my projection is 31% over the PrizePicks line. So I would, if I wanted to take an over on Jalen Hurts, it would be rushing yards, but the under is passing touchdowns. I have him projected for 21.3, 21.4, and you need 23 to win. So not only does he need to get a career high in passing rate, we could see a Lamar Jackson type of year. It's within the range of outcomes for Jalen Hurts. Sure. You add A.J. Brown, boom, like A.J. Brown's a top 5 ceiling type of wide receiver. In fact, if you look at 2021, A.J. Brown's 84th percentile PPR outcome was 5th highest among all wide receivers. You add a dynamic player running the Jalen Reagor and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside routes. Yeah, like you want to be optimistic, but betting on seismic shifts in play calling is usually not a good thing. And especially when the offensive line is really good, just run the dang ball. And that's how the Philadelphia Eagles made to the playoffs. They were losing with giving Jalen Hurts passing volume last year. Then the play calling changed and they moved to a 45% pass team, 40% pass team. Maybe they get up to 51%. I'd have to look at my exact projections here for Philadelphia. But once again, there are ways in which Jalen Hurts can fail. He can get injured. A.J. Brown can get hurt. There are ways, and A.J. Brown has gotten hurt in the past. My projection is a 54% pass rate. That's assuming a like 9% shift in play calling. Like, I'm trying to be optimistic for Jalen Hurts, and I still can't get there with the passing touchdowns. So sorry, I can't do it with Jalen Hurts. If there's one prop for him that I'm taking the under, it is the passing touchdowns for Hurts. Okay, let's keep it going. How we doing? I see a lot of people are in. Use the PrizePicks code that I'm going to post here in the chat. Jump on in at first time deposit. Please use the promo code. Love you to do that. PrizePicks is a lot of fun. As I mentioned before, it's parlay style. So you choose at least 2 players and you choose the over or unders. It's really, really simple. A lot of fun to do. So use that promo code for the first time deposit and they'll match up to $100. So you use the promo code. This is an opportunity now. I've gone through a couple players, Jackson, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts. Put in the chat, are there some quarterbacks you want to hear about that you see on PrizePicks? Let me know in the comments. Love to get your feedback, the audience. If not, I will pick out a couple here in just a moment. In the meantime, while I'm stalling for y'all to type in which quarterback or which prop you want me to chat about, I will talk about the biggest over that I see in my projections. And y'all, maybe you're not going to like it. Maybe you are. I don't know. My biggest over compared to projections is from the New York Giants, Daniel Jones. It's not passing yards. It's not passing touchdowns. It's not even interceptions. It's rushing yards. Daniel Jones over under on PrizePicks. You can bet this. This is rushing yards for Daniel Jones, 350. Okay. Daniel Jones is a rushing quarterback. And he may not play all 17 games. He may have those injuries, but 350 rushing yards, I have him projected for 615. 615. He is a career 5.8 yards per carry. I have Daniel Jones at 106 rushing yards. This is an offense that's going to look very different than what we saw before. So Daniel Jones, I'm taking the over. I know there's some, is Daniel Jones going to be the starting quarterback? Look, maybe Tyrod Taylor plays, but maybe a game or two. But that's 75% more than the PrizePicks line. Yes, a lot of things can go wrong, but this is one where if everything goes right, it's not even just over, it's way over because of the median rush rates, the yards per carry. Like, Daniel Jones has legs. Got to respect it. So that's my biggest over. Obviously, like, these are ones that I'm like, there's reasons why you have to think, like, why are they only putting it at 350.5 if it's that low? It's because there's questions about whether Daniel Jones is going to play all 17 games. In fact, if you look at Daniel Jones' history, like going all the way back to 2019, right? Rushing yards, 279, 20, but that's in 13 games. Give him 4 more games, right? He just needs 70 yards in 4 games. He's on pace to do that. 2020, 423 in 14 games. He hit the over there. Daniel Jones only played 11 games last year, 298 rushing yards. He was 52 under in 6 fewer games. Like, he is a rushing quarterback, and this is, yes, these are career rates, and maybe he's become injured, but that's based on a 17-game projection and that he's going to play 95% of the snaps or so. If there's a biggest over that I noticed discrepancy wise in my projections compared to these PrizePicks lines, that's got to be Daniel Jones. Okay. All right. I'll just keep going. We'll talk about Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, I keep hitting on it, is I have the under on 36.5 passing touchdowns. I have him at 36.24. So maybe it's really close. Both of those passing touchdowns and passing interceptions are at about his lines on PrizePicks, but I projected for 17 games, and I projected Justin Herbert for 671 pass attempts, 444 completions, 4,987 yards, and my yards is 6% over, and I'm not comfortable with that. That's not a good amount that I'm happy taking the over on. That's not going to make it. The margin of 6% is actually really, really small. We're talking 200 some odd yards, and that's one game, right? Pretty much the threshold I look for is if they miss 2 games, can they still get it? And like, for instance, all of my passing yards are like 11%, 6%, 15%, 12% over, because I think PrizePicks builds in games missed. And especially with the Chargers, who are once again a competitive team and have a chance to win in a very competitive. If they win out, this is a dangerous team. So it's possible that Herbert doesn't play come the end of the year, or at least doesn't play full complement of snaps, maybe the last 2 games. It's possible. And so taking the unders in these cases, especially right now before the preseason injury bug hits, right? We've seen Tim Patrick go out with a torn ACL. Patrick is not going to be the last ACL tear. Patrick is not going to be the last preseason injury that we see. And it's going to be money in the bank if there's another player on this list that you take the under on, and poof, like they're a zero, auto zero. Okay. So I tend to take a lot of the unders. I try to be bullish with my projections, see if I can get close to where these lines are, pick the closest one, and then take an under. Typically that will work out like EV wise. Okay. A couple others that I noticed. All right. I think Denver is definitely a team to target the overs on. Okay. I have Denver, in particular, Russell Wilson, projected 16% over his passing yards, 20% over, and these are compared to the PrizePicks lines, 20% over the passing touchdowns, and 26% over the interceptions. I have Russ at 13 interceptions. The line is 10.5, at 13.2 interceptions. Line is 13. The line is 10.5. I have him at 13. Touchdowns, he's at 31.5. PrizePicks is the line. I have him projected for 37.8. 37.8. Man, if they let Russ cook, oh boy. If they let Russ cook. Yeah. Baby. This is going to end months ago, a month and a half ago. It was only 4.5. If you look on PrizePicks for receiving touchdowns, and you go all the way to Sutton, Portland Sutton, 5.5 receiving touchdowns. A month and a half ago was 4.5, and I got 4.5. I plugged in 4.5. Let's go. Also, Mooney. So Mooney, back then, a month and a half ago, 3.5 passing touchdowns. I took the over. It's now 4.5. Let's go. Okay. So hitting on these, yes, the reason why they're higher now is because there's more certainty. Back then the Bears could have signed anybody, and now they're unlikely to sign anybody, which is why now we're moving Darnell Mooney up. But there's no way Mooney was going to not catch 4 touchdowns. Okay. Unless he got hurt, but 4 is such a low number that it should be able to hit. Okay. GB is asking Jameis under interceptions. Okay, so let's talk about Jameis Winston. Yes. I want to talk about Jameis. a famous Jameis, I am in on this year. Looking at what Jameis, so his line right now is 13 and a half interceptions. And this is a player way back when he was with Tampa, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. But if we look at what he did last season, massive difference. Okay. I'm going to go to Pro Football Reference. Okay. And that gives you interception rate. Jameis Winston. And so I use a lot of different sites to put into my projections. Fantasy Data, obviously, but also Pro Football Reference. So I want to give them their due, and also Player Profiler as well. Jameis Winston. Okay, this was his interception percentages throughout his career. 2.8% his rookie year, 3.2% his sophomore year, and third year, 2.5%. 2018, 3.7%. 2019, where he had 626 attempts, 4.8% interception rate. Last season, in 7 games, well, like 6, because he left early with the injury, 1.9%. 1.9%. What is the difference? And you're going to say it was play calling, it was pass volume, blah, blah, blah. 161 attempts in 6 games is like 25, 30 pass attempts. But that's not the difference that I see as key. The difference is the LASIK surgery. And I don't know if any of you have had LASIK surgery. My father has. So I have a secondhand account of the difference that LASIK surgery can have on your eyes. Jameis Winston came out after the LASIK and said that he was just, if he closed his eyes, he was just throwing it up. He was throwing it in the general area of where he thought his player would be. He couldn't see where his receivers were. He's much more accurate now. And yes, he's going to take his deep shots. He's Jameis Winston, right? He wants to win. He's going to be the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And he's got Michael Thomas. He's got Chris Olave. He's got Jarvis Landry. All 3 players are not just like good receivers, but like Michael Thomas doesn't drop passes. Jarvis Landry is sure-handed. Chris Olave, one of the best receivers in college football last season. So all 3 of those, plus Alvin Kamara, there are options. Jameis Winston can make his reads. So talking about Jameis Winston, and his interceptions, I have Jameis Winston under 13 and a half interceptions on the season. Last year, he had 3 in 7 games. Okay. Now, 1.9%, I took that as maybe bumped it up to 2.2% or whatever it was. I said maybe he's a little more aggressive, but it's not quite 2015 Tampa, where Bruce Arians just letting him like let loose. Yeah. Like 500 pass attempts is all I have for Jameis Winston. Plus, I think Taysom Hill is going to get thrown in there a little bit, just a little bit. Like there's ways in which you can get the under without Jameis Winston like imploding. So I have Jameis Winston at 9-10 interceptions on the season. And that's with 500 pass attempts, 62 plays per game, 54% pass to rush ratio. Maybe they go a little heavier, but Jameis Winston under is very interesting to me. And it's almost counterintuitive because you're thinking, oh, he threw 30 interceptions. He's got to do it again. No, there is a legitimate change to this man and what he can see. So Jameis Winston under is one that is, it's not going to be a popular one that's picked, I don't think. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to be a popular pick. Okay, cool. And let me know in the comments. I've got a few more minutes. Let me know if there are any others you want me to talk about. I really appreciate all of you jumping in and commenting, GB, Jose, and the rest of the viewers who are in the stream. Appreciate you watching and viewing. Okay, maybe I'll talk about my boy, Aaron Rodgers. I have him at 4,100 passing yards. That's 15% over his passing yards prop. I also have him at over 31.5 passing touchdowns, but those feel weak to me. Like, I'm not making a strong bet on Aaron Rodgers to go over passing yards, no over passing touchdowns. The Packers are going to need to score touchdowns to win, but I'm not confident in Aaron Rodgers doing it all through the air. You have Aaron Jones and you have A.J. Dillon rushing on the ground. So while I do have projections on overs, I'm not confident about that. The Packers do project to be a good team, but they're slow pace of play, one of the slowest in the NFL. They don't have a defined wide receiver one. Like I joke all the time on Twitter, Aaron Rodgers, wide receiver one is Aaron Jones. So I don't think that being aggressive, like Aaron Rodgers is not a player that I'm making bets on right now. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here's an interesting one. Hopefully they haven't dropped it down. Maybe they have. Okay, let's talk about Stafford because he's been in the news lately for his elbow. And it doesn't look like any of the props have changed. And this is an opportunity, I think, to really jump on the unders. My projections already have Matthew Stafford under passing yards, under passing touchdowns, and slightly over interceptions. But I'm not going to worry about the interceptions. Taking the unders on passing yards and passing touchdowns is going to be key for the Stafford. So you pick one of them. You can't like double up on Stafford, for instance. If you're new to PrizePicks, you can't pick the same player twice in the same parlay. But Stafford, I have projected at 4,394 passing yards and only at 33.7 passing touchdowns. So he would need 35 to hit the over. And like you saw a to the nuts Cooper Kupp season. And yes, they added Allen Robinson, but they lost Robert Woods, and they don't have Odell Beckham, at least for the first half of the season, you have to imagine. Plus, Stafford's dealing with his elbow injury that McVay admits he doesn't know how to handle and he's never worked with before. It's a pitcher injury. It's a baseball pitcher injury that Matthew Stafford is dealing with right now. So they may go more run heavy to start the season if Stafford is out there. And if he is out there, like you could see more mistakes, you could see interceptions, you could see him getting shut down if things are not right. And that is an easy way to get the under for Matthew Stafford passing touchdowns, passing yards. You would need an on the nuts type of season. And we're talking about getting 35 passing touchdowns over the course of a 17-game season. Once again, there are ways in which Stafford could fail. I mentioned the injuries. Also, the issue with maybe the Rams are too good this year, right? They won the Super Bowl last year. If they get the bye, that's going to be less Matthew Stafford, less stress on him. In fact, Matthew Stafford, has, aside from 2019, had never had a yards per attempt higher than 8.1, which was last year. Stafford also last year tied a career high with 41 passing touchdowns. Every other year, except 2011, Stafford had the under on this passing touchdowns. He had 26 back in 16 games in 2020. He had 21 in 2018. Yes, these are all the Lions stats, but even going back to 2015, 2014, 2013, when he had Calvin Johnson, those were 32, 22, 29 seasons. So taking the under on Stafford, I think makes sense at this point in the season for the passing touchdowns and passing yards. All right. I think that will do it for today. Unless there are any other quarterbacks you want to hear about in the comments, please let me know. I'll wait around for just a little bit. But in the meantime, if you haven't used the promo code, I have it in the chat and also posted right here. Use the promo code, go to PrizePicks, and for a first-time deposit, they'll match up to $100. Appreciate you supporting the podcast, supporting me, supporting all that. Use the promo code right there for PrizePicks. And in the meantime, yeah, thanks. Absolutely. Thanks to you, Jose, for tuning in. Appreciate you tuning in. Absolutely. Happy to do this. This is the first of a 4-part series where I'm going to talk about running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So, of course, tonight, quarterbacks. And then I'll see if I can sneak in the rest of the positions before I head off to Canton on, I think, Thursday night. I think I'm going to head down to Cleveland, the Cleveland area on Thursday night, and then to Canton on Friday morning. All right. That'll do it for tonight's podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. If you haven't followed me on Twitter, follow me at FFStalder. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button, the red button. And if you want to give 5 stars, all that, share it with your friends. The podcast, the audio podcast, goes up on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm probably there, and really appreciate all the support that you've been showing to the podcast over these last few months. I've got some big announcements coming up for the NFL season. So keep following here. And yeah, I'm excited for all the good things, all the goodness that's going to be happening. We have football. We had football last night. It was great. It was awesome. Oh, I felt like it was like I was holding my son, my 2-week-old son, just in my arms. And I was just telling him, like, Samir White, I need him to get over 25.5 rushing yards. He can do it. It's special moments like that I'm happy and excited. I'm able to share with my son, and I shared those with my daughters as well. Not to take anything away from my daughters. Absolutely love my daughters. They're great. I'm repping all of my children right here on my shirt. Love them to death. But there's something special about I've been waiting for years for my son. Love him to death, and love that I'm able to share this love of football and a great time with him. Yeah, that's what you can expect over the next week or so. And then after Canton, we'll have more preseason to talk about, and hopefully, good things will be in the works. All right. In the meantime, good luck in the best ball streets, everybody.